Hello there. So as the title implies, what does a Green Party progressive have to say to neoliberal, you know, establishment Democrat gaslighting? So we'll just jump right into it. The thing is, okay, there are certain implications of being a Green voter. Yes, for one, they do exist. The Green Party is obviously a minor party in the political, spectrum of the U.S. Um, Oftentimes, perhaps to some degree, we take the blame for, Democrats losing, or in some cases, Republicans losing. The point is that political parties exist to represent the wants and desires and the ideas and more or less the ideology of their constituents. And those who support a party typically, you know, um, resonate with the ideas of that party. So with that said, just there's a lot of confusion as to what exactly the Green Party is, because believe it or not, U.S. politics is relatively inane concept to the vast majority of politically apathetic people, because you ask someone with just a general idea of what politics are, you hear the notion of a two-party system, and that is true because there is a two-party majority system. It's not to say that we only have two parties in the United States. It's just the the implication that only one of two parties typically wins an election, with a very few rare exceptions. So with that said, everything going on, particularly regarding Joe Biden and the presidential election, perhaps there is some confusion, and there needs to be some clarity in regards to what exactly it means to be green, member of the Green Party, I suppose. And just to clarify, politics is not. A lot of people say I'm a hardcore Democrat or I'm a hardcore Republican. It's not how politics is supposed to work. You should not identify as a political party. Meaning, when someone asks you your politics, the biggest problem right there is people often say I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. And they often, confuse the term liberal and Democrat with, against conservative and Republican. And conservatism and liberalism are more, ideological preferences, I suppose, whereas Democrat and Republican are just the actual party names. And they tend to correlate, but when you identify as a Democrat or a Republican, you're not, doesn't really answer the question, because you're saying the all-encompassing, corporatist policies of either party are what I align with. And when you kind of drill into what someone actually believes, you'll quickly realize that their political ideology is far from what a Democrat is on paper or what a Republican is on paper. So without bogging you down too much into this detail, it's not really the scope of this video. This is more of a kind of response to criticisms people like me tend to receive for supporting the Green Party or the minority candidate, aka the candidate who doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning. So why do we support someone we know is going to lose? And you have to understand, in order to ask that question, you have to understand why people vote in the first place. What does the principle of voting entail? Voting, you vote for people who hold your ideologies, who agree with you on how you want to live in the society you want to live in. So the notion that why would you support a party that's not going to win? It's not about, we eventually hope to win, you know? And yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 2020, perhaps. Um, but the critique of, third party voters, and I'm gonna focus on Green just because that's what I know. But I'm talking there, there are many minority parties in the U.S. Green tends to be a target these days from, neoliberal, kind of typical, I suppose, traditional Democrats. Green Party supporters tend to be a high target because, there's this idea, this theory, that Green Party takes votes away from Democrats. And look, objectively speaking, do people who support the Green Party overlap more with Democrats than Republicans? Yes, absolutely. No one's denying that. But to say that you're taking votes away from I have a list of these criticisms that I just kind of wanted to run by. So first and foremost, what you hear most is a vote for third party is a vote for Trump, plain and simple. And you are assuming that that third party voter, all else being equal, would have voted for the Democrat. Granted, let's ignore the let's rephrase this. Instead of a vote for third party is a vote for Trump, let's say a vote for Green. A vote for the Green Party is a vote for Trump. Um, that's not how things work. I don't mean to be dismissive. I'm trying to understand the logic behind that statement, because you can't have an action or inaction, so to say. Because the inaction here is not voting for the Democrat. The action is voting for the Green. So an inaction does not equal an action by default. Me voting Green does not give Trump any net advantage in the grand scheme of things, because Trump's votes don't go up by one. If there are 3 people voting, one votes for the Democrat, one votes for the Republican, and one votes for the Green Party, that Green vote doesn't go to Trump. So just and I know these are all semantics. I'm not stupid. I know what the real implication is here, but if we're going to focus on semantics, let's get the semantics right. So what that should say is not a vote for Green Party is a vote for Trump, but a vote for Green Party takes away a prospective vote away from the Democrat. Perhaps that's a better way of saying it, but that's not even true, because that relies on a very flawed assumption that the person voting Green was going to vote for the Democratic nominee. And I think that's where that confusion lies, because, look, to someone who supports Green politics, the Green Party, I'm going to interchange a lot of these because I really don't know how to describe ourselves to the general populace who's so fixated on a two-party system. So I'm just going to say Green, and it encompasses everything from Green, political leanings, to Green parties, to Green candidates, to Green ideologies that often overlap with progressive ideologies. And, the term progressive it's not new, it's relatively new in the minds of, voters, that progressive politics is just radical left-wing politics, and, that kind of, puts a shiv in the Green Party, because progressive politics have always been the core concepts of the Green Party. So to kind of have blue piggyback and say, oh, progressive politics are ours. Sorry, got a little... No. For blue to say progressive politics are the one, that's, but we also understand that as a minority party, you have to be relatable. So, it's easy to piggyback. For example, Bernie Sanders, not really a Democrat, an independent, but he piggybacks off the Democratic platform because his ideology and what he believes in most falls in line with the majority party of the Democrats. And the same is true for, independent and Republicans or libertarian Republicans. But, you know, we can get boggled down in details, and I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. So, a vote for Green is a vote for Trump, plain and simple. No, it's not. A vote for Green is a vote for Green. A vote for Trump is a vote for Trump, and a vote for Biden is a vote for Biden. My inaction to vote for Biden is not my actionable action to vote for Trump. It's I'm voting for my candidate. I'm voting in a democracy for the candidate that most aligns with my beliefs. So I'm sorry that we tend to overlap in ideology and you somehow think that my vote is being taken away from Biden. It's not, because I was never going to vote for a Democrat. I don't, when it comes to political ideology, I don't fall in line with the Democratic ideology. I fall in line more with the Green ideology. So it's almost insulting to say that I should sacrifice my ideology and my beliefs so your candidate can have a little better chance. So yeah, a vote for Green is not a vote for Democrats. You can make the argument that a vote for Green takes potential votes away from Democrats. I'll give you that. But don't tell me a vote for Green is a vote for Trump. That's just factually incorrect, and it's honestly quite dismissive. The next, by voting third party, you're telling marginalized groups that your abstract ideas are more important than their very real lives. Think about what that says for a minute. Think about the person making this statement. By voting third party, you're telling marginalized groups that your abstract ideas are more important than their very real lives. What part of my ideas are abstract? One, that's what I want to know. Because, the biggest, let's just merge progressive politics and green politics into one, because honestly, they're one and the same for the most part. There's a lot of nuance, obviously, but progressives, if you call yourself a progressive, you fall more in line with green than with blue. That's just a fact. So now the implication is, it's privileged suddenly. My abstract ideas are more important than the very real lives. What are my abstract ideas doing to the very real lives of marginalized groups? Because to make that statement, very obviously, it's ironic, because to be able to make a statement like that, you have to come from a place of privilege. It means you don't understand what it means to be a marginalized group. Because you're essentially saying the pinnacle of progressive policy. Let's just say it. It's obvious, Medicare for all. That's the one thing that's kind of really the driving point. With you ask anyone on the street, progressives, what do they believe in? Medicare for all is almost always going to be the first thing on that list. You're telling me that my belief in allowing everyone equal access to healthcare, affordable healthcare, is some sort of pipe dream, and I should stand in line because what groups am I marginalizing by demanding, hey, maybe we should get in line with the rest of the world and not have healthcare be a profit-driven industry? What groups am I marginalizing there? And I seriously want to know, because can you think of a more marginalized group than someone who has a terminal illness and can't afford their healthcare? I'm sorry, what's more marginalized than that? Look, the alter implication here is by not voting blue, your privilege is showing. I'm going to combine these two because it's kind of, the response is the same. By not voting blue, your privilege is showing, and by voting third party, you're telling marginalized groups that your ideas are more important than their lives. How about this? How about by saying vote blue no matter who, your privilege is showing? Because you're essentially saying, I just care about identity politics. I just want a Democrat on the ticket. I don't care about the policy implications. I don't actually care about the marginalized groups that are going to suffer from both parties, because let's just be honest, Joe Biden literally said he's going to veto Medicare for all if it comes on his desk. And even when followed up with, well, suppose it actually did come across your desk, his response was, it's not going to come across my desk. So he's essentially telling you that an idea that 90% of the country believes in, 90%, and it's not even lying. Maybe the exact number is wrong, but the vast majority of the country supports Medicare for all. So you're telling me the candidate, the people's candidate, the Democratic candidate, is going to turn his back on an idea that 90% of the population, supports, and he won't even consider it. That tells you, who he really is. Obviously, I don't expect much from the Republicans. I hold Democrats to higher standards because I expect more from Democrats, just historically and, even in recent history. Let's just be honest, green and blue align more than green and red. So I hold Democrats to a higher standard. So when a Democrat says, I will veto something that 90% of the population supports, who exactly are you supporting? What are these marginalized groups? Because I would love to meet these marginalized groups that I am supposedly spitting in the face of when I vote green. Because it seems to me you don't really know these marginalized groups, because the marginalized groups I'm thinking of are the disenfranchised, the people on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you don't know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, just something you learn in any basic psychology class. It's pretty much a pyramid, and it has your needs. And the bottom is the stuff you need to live, and the top is the stuff you need to be comfortable. Guess what's on the bottom? Food, shelter. That's the stuff that is really kind of bottom line. Once you go up a little, then you get into like later stages of comfortable needs. I call it the pyramid of comfort. Where do you stand on the pyramid of comfort? What are you concerned about? Are you concerned about paying your rent and feeding your family? Or are you concerned about a Supreme Court nomination? Because you're concerned for those two things. Everyone's passively concerned about putting food on the table. It's a platitude. People say, I want to support my family. But there's a difference between someone who says, my family's my priority, putting food on the table is my priority, and someone actually living that reality where they don't know if they're going to get their next paycheck on time, and they're one paycheck away from homelessness, and they have to cry a little when their kids ask them to eat dinner out because they know that they can't afford it. So those are the marginalized groups I'm thinking of, or the people who can't afford health insurance and have terminal illnesses and are relying on government programs that are notoriously, good for people with low income. And, the notion that, Medicare is a terrible system. No, Medicare is a very popular system. Perhaps you should talk to some people who use Medicare, because the government doesn't really... Look, I'll agree that the government doesn't do a lot of things right. Perhaps they're not running it as efficiently as they can. But to say that, because it's not 100% perfect, it's not driven like a lean, mean, profit-generating machine, that it's not a good system, that's just stupidity. Because Medicare is really the last fallback option for a lot of people, especially only really the retired. And then you have, state-level programs. But the point is that government-sponsored healthcare, yeah, it's not perfect. No one's asking it to be perfect. But that's the option you have when you need to live. So to say that, no, they're not marginalized, I'm talking about the minorities in the country. I'm talking about transgender individuals. Are they disenfranchised? Yes, absolutely. But to say that, and I don't mean any of this to sound offensive. I don't mean any of this to be, a blow in anyone's face. I'm not here to take away movement from any group. But you have to really ask yourself that if someone is struggling to pay their medical bills, if someone's afraid to go to the hospital because they know they can't afford it, they can barely pay their rent, they can barely feed their families, if you honestly believe that they care about transgender rights and your access to abortion and a lot of other, mid-pyramid level um, needs, that's coming from a place of privilege because you don't understand what it's like to be on the bottom of that pyramid. Access to abortion, you know, transgender rights, equal protections, yes, they're important, they're necessary, and Green Party stands for all of them. But we also know where priorities lie. We're not going to move abortion rights, for example, prioritize that over the right to health care. And I know abortion and healthcare kind of intertwine, but my main point is that you need to fix that hierarchy of needs. And when you're focusing on, implications of red, of what a Republican is going to do, you're actually marginalizing the groups that are actually marginalized. Now, the Bernie or bust crowd is responsible for Trump. And also, Bernie Sanders is responsible for Trump. Where do I begin? So, let's get on this notion that Bernie Sanders himself is responsible. And like I said, I'm not here to talk from a place of bias. I'm obviously somewhat biased because of my political leanings, but I make an active effort to not show that bias and not portray that bias when evaluating these arguments. So is Bernie Sanders responsible? Yeah, if we look from 10,000 miles away, Bernie Sanders might have a little responsibility. He might have a fraction to do with it, and his supporters might have a fraction to do with it, and apathetic voters might have a little bit to do with it, and the people who just didn't vote might have a little bit to do with it, and yeah, maybe some Green Party people had a little bit to do with it, maybe some Republicans, because they didn't vote Democrat, had a little bit to... You can point fingers all day, but who's the most to blame? Are you insinuating that a candidate's job is not to get people to like them? It's the people's job to like the candidate regardless, because that's not how democracy and go to any high school presidential election. That's you can quickly learn that's not how it works. You don't force people to like you. You get people to like you. So Bernie Sanders and his supporters, and look, did I like Bernie Sanders? Yeah, I thought he was the best candidate. Did I think he was some sort of messiah and I was going to follow him to the edge of the earth? No, I disagree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of things, particularly his stances on energy. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but the point is Bernie Sanders, for a lot of Green Party voters, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I think the vast consensus is Bernie Sanders encompassed the ideas that most progressive and Green voters liked, and therefore they liked that candidate. And I'm not going to get into all the duckery that happened in 2016 regarding the DNC. I think any educated voter can easily find that out and quickly realize that rigging an election is not necessarily conspiracy theory. It's actually something that can happen subtly. When you have one candidate financially supporting the party's platform, their committee, I think, you have to really objectively look at that. But the notion that, okay, so what was Bernie supposed to do? Not run? Do we just not have primaries? Do we just pick a candidate from the beginning? Because if you're going to blame Bernie voters, I think many people often forget or perhaps don't know that more Hillary voters voted for McCain back in 2008 out of protest, maybe out of ideology, I don't know. But the notion that blaming Bernie voters for Trump, let's say, your argument fails quickly when you realize that a larger percentage of Hillary voters voted for McCain than Obama. And Obama still won. And that speaks to the popularity of Obama versus the popularity of Hillary Clinton or the establishment Democrat candidate. So when you say, let's blame Bernie or his supporters, you're actually saying, I don't believe in democracy, and I think think you should just fall in line with the DNC's choice, because at the end of the day, that's really what it was. So, yeah, it's not a good argument. Sorry. Now, I welcome critique. I'm not here to, stand on the soapbox. I welcome ideas. I welcome statements about why I'm wrong. And, many times there have been many situations where I've made a statement that I truly believed in, and someone gave a very good counter argument. And I said, you know what? That makes sense. I agree. So I'm not. And that's the thing about green voters in general. I'm not, again, I'm not, doing a blanket statement, but the green voters historically are the voters who are on the outskirts of politics. We don't really get our views represented. We have a variety of views, and they tend to gravitate towards one giant platform. But a lot of the Green Party voters are just people who've been marginalized, left on the outskirts. People who understand politics, who understand the systemic corruption in politics, how money influences politics, how donor money influences politics. So, but, that's another video, that's another story. So you're okay with another 4 years of Trump? No, not necessarily. Or obviously the implication of me voting green, or me really not voting for Biden, is signaling that I'm okay with another 4 years of Trump. And I can honestly see why that argument would be made. I can understand back from the first, topic we've covered as to how a vote for green is not necessarily a vote for Trump, but a vote for green is taking a theoretical potential vote away from Biden, which, could happen, maybe does happen to some degree. But somehow that's implying that I'm okay. No, I'm not okay with another 4 years of Trump, but I'm also not okay with going back to the status quo. And, as much as I dislike Trump and as much as I would love to see Trump out of office, I have to give him one major thing on the credit list, and that's he woke people up politically. You're telling me that before Trump, people were actively involved in the political process, encouraging their peers to vote, demanding accountability from the government? That didn't really happen until Trump was in office. And that only happens when you have a borderline, perhaps beyond borderline, tyrant in office. When he wakes people up, he gets people like, holy crap, this guy is our president. That wakes people up. That makes people realize, where did we go wrong? And unfortunately, the establishment, and I use this word a lot, establishment, and people often roll their eyes like it's some sort of conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. The establishment is the political establishment, just the group of everyone concocting and colluding to make sure politics favors those who are in power. It's lobbyists, it's giant corporations, it's career politicians, it's news agencies who have to support political narrative in order to gain advertiser funding. It's career politicians who are reliant on corporate donations to refund their political campaigns. It's lobbyists who have a financial incentive to essentially legally bribe a politician to change policy that favors their industry. So that is what the establishment is. So when I say establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans, what I really mean is just establishment politics. It's at the end of the day, Democrat versus Republican, there are only several dozen key issues that differentiate a Democrat versus Republican, abortion rights, taxation, let's say, but 90% of the stuff they vote on, they agree with. When it comes to screwing over the middle class and the working class and giving the breaks for the political donors, the corporate class, Yeah, they agree on most things. So there really isn't a bunch of identity politics in the House and Senate. Believe me when I say that. They're buddy buddy, they're friends. There's an unwritten law that you don't challenge the status quo, and that's essentially what you're saying to me when you say I'm okay with another 4 years of Trump. Saying, why are you challenging the status quo? Because somehow not wanting either candidate means I'm okay with this whole notion of lesser of two evils. Somehow got us to the situation we're in. It's as if Donald Trump came out of nowhere. He didn't come out of nowhere. Donald Trump happened because there was a sizable portion of the population who felt unheard. Um, was there racism and sexism at play? Yes. When you have a population of a voting population of over, you know, 250 million, yeah, you're going to have wide spectrum and a wide variety of different rationale. But the grand scheme of things, when you look at collectivity, is people felt unheard. People felt that for decades the corporate establishment was screwing them over. They weren't being heard. And it's why Bernie Sanders became so popular, and it's why Donald Trump won, because those were the two candidates that acted as the people's candidates. Whether they actually propagated and believed in their ideologies. Obviously, for Trump, it was not the case. Can you make the case that Bernie Sanders could have, been a progressive pipe dream and change? Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe, but his track record tends to speak differently. Usually, politicians don't have 40 years of consistency in, but this isn't about Bernie Sanders. It's about whether I'm okay with Trump. No, I'm not okay with Trump being in another 4 years. But you know what? I am okay with people being politically woke. I don't want people to go back to the political apathy of an establishment, decent politician who keeps people asleep, is dignified and speaks well and gives platitudes and gives people the comfort to know that maybe their political the future, their government is not at stake. I don't want that. Do I want one more than the other? I don't know at this point because I like the fact that people are awake. I like the fact that people are standing up and demanding political change. And as much as you hate Trump and as much as I hate Trump, you have to give it to him that he woke people up in that regard. And taking that away with a Biden presidency essentially just means that the establishments are back in power. The platitudes come out, the talking points to assuage the concerns of the American populace, to go back into their homes and be comfortable and be the consumers that the world wants them to be. Is that what you want? Because it kind of counters your whole marginalized groups argument. Because you have to understand that those real marginalized groups that you wanted to, use as a trophy group to make your point, those real marginalized groups that I referenced earlier in this discussion, they don't care who's president. And they they care about their day-to-day livelihood. They don't care about the Supreme Court and who's going to be on the Supreme Court. You and I might care. You and I might care that, hey, there are groups of people who can be adversely affected by a Republican on the Supreme Court. But good luck telling that and gaining empathy from someone who has stage 4 cancer and no insurance. Good luck telling them that, hey, you need to vote blue because the Supreme Court. And they're like, dude, I have cancer and I have $500,000 in medical debt. I don't give a shit who's on the Supreme Court. Hey, that's a place of privilege that you don't understand that there are groups who do not benefit from either Democrat or Republican. And when there's a candidate who says that they support progressive policies, populist policies that the majority of the country wants and needs, and to say that they're being selfish because you want to feel comfortable. Because I guarantee you, the upper middle class Democrats who are touting this nonsense, that are saying that I personally am ignoring marginalized groups, I guarantee you their lives have not significantly changed with Trump or with Obama or with Bush. And let's ignore COVID for a minute because I know COVID kind of threw a wrench in the gears, so to say. So let's pretend this is 19 and you're a upper middle class Democrat. You can't honestly say that your life has significantly changed because of Trump. But you know whose life has changed because of Trump? That bottom margin. And it's not just because of Trump. Their life has been declining little by little under Obama, under Bush, under Clinton. So perhaps what you should ask is, am I okay with people continuing to be politically woke and demanding change and accountability from their government? Or am I okay with going back to the status quo? Perhaps you should answer that question if you demand that from me. And lastly, the choice is really between Biden and Trump. Biden may not be perfect, but at least he will move us in the right direction. And let's be real for a minute. Yeah, the choice, like I said, we're not here to play politics. We're not here to pick teams. We're not here to advocate for something that's not going to happen. It's going to be Biden or Trump. I'm not insinuating that my vote for the Green Party is somehow my expectation that the Green Party is going to win. I know the Green Party is not going to win. The reason people vote for minority parties is so those minority parties gain more popularity over time. Because progress is not determined with one presidential nominee. Progress is inevitable in a democracy. Progress happens when you have diversification of a population and you have a growing population who demands more, who wants a little more than the trivial comforts of the day-to-day. And most of all, progress happens when you have open communication and globalization, when people can see that, hey, there are people in other parts of the world who have this and they don't have that. And, allowing people to compare, it's why, this is for another topic, but it's why you should be public about how much you're getting paid. It's a taboo subject, how much is your paycheck? No, it's not. When people communicate, people have more power. So when the population of a country and the population of a bunch of countries communicate with one another, information is power here. They get information that they didn't previously have access to because they thought it was taboo or they just didn't have the means to get that information. Now that they have that information, they're going to demand action on that information. So when people know that other countries have socialized healthcare, and I hate that word socialism because believe me, if you know what real socialism is, you know what I'm saying, but there's a difference between social democracy, capitalist system that says, hey, I give a shit about my people, versus a crony capitalist system where it says, hey, let's crush it, everyone and make every dime possible. And any kind of corporate handout, any type of government handout, we're going to call it socialism. They're two vastly different things. But the saying that, what are we going on? It's a choice between two. Yes, it is. But it's not either. It's a choice between two because one of the two are going to win, but it's also a message that says that, hey, we are growing as a country and we are demanding progress as a country. Because when the minority party gains more votes over time, and I hear a lot of the, if you want to vote green, start at the local level, start at the state level, and then grow. Don't do it on the national level. And that's true. Those are two simultaneous arguments that are being generated. A lot of people don't know this. You're either in one camp or the other. I, wanting to be as objective as possible. There are two simultaneous things going on there. Saying that, hey, you need to do this from the grassroots level, ground up. Don't just, don't jump into the presidential race and expect it. And also, the other camp is saying that how else do you expect to garner attention if not on a national level? And what you have is two simultaneous yet contradictory actions going on. Where is the Green Party not working on the local level? Absolutely, they are. But you can't have localized movement without national recognition. You can go around. Okay, look, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just as an example. She's nothing that she's a Democrat and all that. She is a congresswoman in New York, in one district in New York. The whole country knows her. Her constituents, I'm not her constituent. It's very likely you're not her constituent unless you're in her specific district in New York. She only represents a small fraction because she's in the House of Representatives, and she represents that small faction of New Yorkers in her district. But she has national attention. Everyone knows her name. It's a household name, but I can't vote for her. I have to rely. I like her. Doesn't matter. Do her constituents like her? That's what matters. But when you have a public movement, public acknowledgement that, hey, look at AOC, look at what she's doing, this young, new progressive, bringing fresh ideas into the political game, that gets the country awoken that, hey, who is this AOC? Hey, I kind of agree with her. That's a similar concept of how the Green Party is expected, and all minority parties are expected to propagate and grow, is you gotta work, you don't work from the ground up, or you don't work from the top down, you burn two candles at the ends, I suppose. You work from the top down, but you also work from the bottom up. You work from the bottom up to grow and gain momentum, but you work from the top down to get that recognition, to get that break. You don't have legitimacy without national recognition. If you don't have the national recognition, people are going to think you're a joke. I can literally make a political party right now, go door to door and say, I'm the e-cigarette party. Vote for us. We believe in banning all tobacco products and deregulating. That's our primary platform. We also believe in Medicare for all. I could do that, and people will laugh at me because they're like, I've never heard of you. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going to vote for some party. People don't know a lot about Green, but people have heard about the Green Party. And the only reason people have heard about the Green Party is because of that national attention, that top-down work. So it's conflicting because, yeah, we should work from the grassroots level. We should gain more local support. But to say we shouldn't do the national level stuff, well, that's just criminal, because not doing the national level stuff means we are not going to be as easily recognized, because there are still a lot of people who don't know what the Green Party platform is. So by voting Green, and by voting really, at the end of the day, you're voting for who you believe in, who stands for your principles. And that's the entire point of voting. Voting is not some strategic game theory problem where you have to evaluate, like, Americans and people don't do that. We don't play game theory. We're not running simulations. We're not running a business strategy here. We're voting for people who represent our interests. And at the end of the day, that's all it is. So we have a recognition on a national level. So we have that localized, hey, yeah, I heard about them. Yeah, I'd like to learn more. And we have the localized power, that local grassroots movement, to go door to door in each city and say, hey, you've obviously heard about us, but you probably don't know a lot about us. So you have to burn the candle at both ends when you have a minority party. And I'm sorry, telling us to not be on a national level because we should do it on the local level first is just you telling us to get in line and vote for the establishment Democrat because you don't want the theoretical votes for your Democratic candidate to go away. And really, that's all there is to say. You know, there's a lot of gaslighting going on, and I think a lot of people are afraid to say what they really want in regards to how they plan to vote. But the reality is, you have to understand at the end of the day, voting could be personal if you want to make it public. But the point of voting is to vote for the person who represents your interests. And maybe me making this video and encouraging people to vote their conscience, because somehow that became a dirty term, voting your conscience. Because when you vote your conscience, you ignore the marginalized groups. But ask those people who are accusing you of ignoring the marginalized groups, what have they done to support those marginalized groups? Ask them if they know anyone who fall into those marginalized groups, because I guarantee you they don't know many. I guarantee you they don't even know who the marginalized groups are. I do, and I know that neither party represents them. So to insinuate that somehow the less evil party is better for the marginalized groups because they still won't do anything, they just won't bash them, they won't trash talk them, sorry, that's not good enough. So when you are going to vote for the person that represents your interests, because that's what voting is meant to be. That's all.